It's Wednesday, August 1st, 2018 at 8:30 a.m. And I would ask everyone to please rise so we can have our invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for the many blessings you bestowed on our community. As we gather here in public service to our town and its citizens, we ask for your divine guidance and wisdom to help us govern effectively, to do what serves the greater good and best interest of our citizens, and to be good stewards and guardians of this beautiful place we call home. In your name, we humbly ask these things. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, now we'll say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, our first item of business would be the adoption of an agenda. Council has agendas in front of them. Are there any requests for changes, additions? Hearing none, then I would call for a motion to adopt.
I'll make a motion we adopt the agenda.
Commissioner Cameron makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Kilby seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, let's move to public comment. I've not seen the sheet over there. There's a couple of members of the public. Is there anyone out there that wants to make a comment? If none, then we'll go ahead and proceed with item number 4, which is unfinished business. That item deals with sort of an ongoing status report. We've got several initiatives underway that relate to our dam. We've contracted with Dr. Dan Marks, who did the dam safety reports, to prepare a number of documents that the state of North Carolina Dam Safety Office has requested or is requiring that the town submit. And so you see on the agenda the list of them: an OM&I manual for the dam and the hydroelectric plant, an H&H, hydraulic and hydrology model analysis for the dam and the areas tributary to it and downstream from it, and emergency action plan that relates to that H&H analysis. And then we asked Dr. Marks independently, the state did not ask for this, to do a post-storm impact study. And so what I can report to you is that Dr. Marks has been working on all of these things. The deadline for a couple of them that was set by the state would have required the submission of 2 significant documents, one being the H&H model analysis and the other one the emergency action plan. On this day, those reports are still in process. And from a meeting that Shannon and I had with him earlier this week, he has notified the state that he's under contract and working on those documents, and he has set Shannon a deadline of August, is it 16th?
I believe so.
August 16th as his target date to have those documents completed, and apparently the state is satisfied that we're making sufficient progress and that date would be acceptable. And so as it relates to that particular, those 2 particular items, he brought with him, saying Dr. Marks, some of his engineering calculations, and he gave us a briefing on where things are with respect to the H&H analysis. That's sort of a first step. He can't really finish that until he has the data to determine how to regulate the dam under emergency conditions. So he showed us some calculations and attempted to explain to us what those meant. Shannon, I'll let you chime in, but basically what I heard was because we are a high hazard dam that is over, I believe the threshold is 100 feet long, and because of the size of the impoundment that we have, that we fall under like the maximum classification of dam, highest hazard, and therefore the design flood, the design storm flow is astronomical, for which our dam is going to be analyzed under this H&H study. I don't want to, we'll let him explain this when he's done, but I get out of it that there's virtually no way to pass a storm of that size. I mean, it's a 1,000-year storm. It's over a 500-year storm. Let's put it that way.
The one we
And
just went through.
It's
way beyond.
It's
Right.
way beyond that.
Right.
And
That was
so-
a 10 or a little bit greater.
So our initial concern was then, how could our dam, ever pass muster? And he said, well, virtually no dams in the state could pass a storm like that, and therefore, we'll just need to address how we would deal with a storm like that in our emergency action plan. So
So we've already got a track record, we've already done it.
the alarm bells
Right.
went off, and so I don't know. We'll see where that goes. But I thought when I heard that it was a very significant thing. But apparently, and we'll have a chance to work with our new consultants as we go forward on that.
Just a tiny bit off track, but along the same line, where do we stand with regard to the purchase of the debris boom that we authorized as a result of that storm and all the trash and debris?
Shannon,
It's been purchased.
yeah,
It has been purchased.
Has been.
Okay.
yeah. And as last I saw, there was a plan where to place the anchors
Yes,
along the channel.
that's right.
So that it can be deployed and
Right. Okay.
kept,
That's
so
right. So
I
I
think
met
we're
with-
moving along on
So I
that.
met with Dean.
Right.
And we took a look at the Morris Park site plan, and so we picked locations that would be outside of the improved area for Morris Park site plan. I
Yeah,
think
Tim
we-
Edwards was going to install those anchors, if I recall.
That's what I understood, yeah.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Has it been delivered or just ordered?
It's been purchased, it's been ordered. I want to say that it's been delivered, but I'm not positive on that. I believe it's been delivered, and it's at the Public Works facility.
So we can check on that after.
I will.
So this work on the H&H analysis and EAP, which are the two things the state is requiring, appears to be coming along. That's my status report. Shannon heard probably the
Well,
same
The
thing.
only other thing I would add is that we heard something very interesting from Dr. Marks when we met with him, that basically he believes he may have found an error in one of the previous studies that was completed for the town that's been submitted to the state. And so he's going to go back and analyze that. But that has to do with the fact that we never take the lake below 16 feet. And when the calculations were performed, they assumed that basically the lake basically could be drained. Has to do with the watershed and the load and the impact of the dam. So it also has to do with overtopping of the dam, and he basically demonstrated to us basically how there must be an error in some of the calculations. So he's had that conversation with the state.
Yeah, on the overtopping issue,
Yeah.
it appears it was Charles T. Main, the engineering, that did the former hydraulic analysis on the dam. And for whatever reason, they assumed that the bridge structure was the top of the dam.
Yes.
And
They thought it was topping over the top of the bridge.
yeah, so the control elevation was set up at the bridge deck.
Right.
And there's a considerable space above the arches that are at different elevations for a reason, we think, at least he says, to divert, the initial overtopping around the powerhouse. If you look at the elevations, the highest arches sort of protect the powerhouse and begin to divert the flooding, the overtopping to the outboard sides. Over the gates first, and then over the opposite side of the dam, and then the powerhouse, you really need to overtop to get to that.
And another thing he pointed out was that if in fact that was the top of the dam, obviously water would roll around the bridge before it rolled over the bridge.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
he did.
that was another thing. And there would be a spread that would change the velocity. So it was an interesting discussion.
You know my favorite saying, don't you? You're only as good as your worst employee, worst engineer. That's how good you are. That's what calculations are about.
Maybe.
So whoever's your weakest link is
Well,
how
I'll tell
good you
you,
are.
I'll tell you right now, and we'll hear from our new engineers in a minute, but I knew that was an important analysis from the standpoint of coming up with an operational plan to deal with the flood. The analysis of the dam and its structural integrity and its ability to handle what we need to handle, which is what Schnabel is going to be dealing with. Yesterday, I heard from them that this is a critical piece of the data they need, and so we will have them go over Dr. Marks's H&H analysis thoroughly before we proceed very far to make sure that it is, in fact, a second set of eyes. That's good.
Now, I've been informed all along that we could not lower it more than 16 feet. Does that still hold true?
Yeah, that is
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the base of the inlet structure.
I think the other thing that I would add is that based on his post-storm impact study, and we're going to get a letter to the League of Municipalities, it's something when we told them we were doing this, they were excited. So, but basically the bottom line is that the dam structure performed well and the operations during the storm were appropriate to mitigate the impact of the storm. And so that's the bottom line for that report, which is good news for us. So we'll be able to report that back to the league and to the state regarding the structure. So.
When,
And we have 5 copies of the report, which we just received, and make those available to any of you that want to read it.
Yeah, I'd like
a
a copy, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to go over it with him so I understood before you get it, if he said everything that we expected him to cover. And he did. He explained this, I think, so he satisfied me at least, so I'll get those copies out to you. They're in my office, I think.
Which report? The post-storm?
Impact.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, post-storm impact assessment. It's a very favorable, as Shannon says. It reflects favorably on 2 things: the way in which the dam was operated during that event, and the performance of the dam, the gates, structurally.
well, that's why I'm encouraged. I mean, we've just gone through the worst event. We have a complete report or almost complete report. Now we can reverse engineer and say, hey, this is what worked. These are our weak points, and let's go from there. So
Yep.
that's a great track record to have for engineering purposes.
Yeah, we thought, that was not something the state asked for, but we thought this would be good based on the early results of the state coming out and looking at it and not saying to us, but saying to themselves, apparently, there's no issue here. And then Dr. Marks coming out and looking at it and saying basically the same thing. I don't really see any further deterioration. And then we just asked them to get a little more data from some of those piezometers that are in the ground to see if the uplift has changed dramatically. And it has changed. I mean, it has. It's been 6 months, and those same channels have begun to clog again with that iron slime, and so there is a rise, but it's nowhere near where it had been. Where before we blew it out.
Right.
So,
Oh, good.
Are you
Steve?
getting ready to move on, or are you still talking?
yes, sir.
about-
No, I just would ask if there's any at this point.
Well,
if there's any.
Okay,
Question.
July 10th, during our council meeting, I expressed that I was anxious to read the OM&I plan that he presented to council, and I guess I wasn't clear enough, but I would like a copy of that to review. So
I have copies in my office after the meeting. If you'd like to come down there, I'd be happy to give them to you.
okay, yeah, I'd like to review that.
Sure.
Thanks.
Sure.
Now, at what point, I noticed there's a recommended motion in our packet, and we're talking 4 documents here, the 4th one being the post-storm impact study, but that's not mentioned in the motion or in the brief summary in our document, in our packet. So the question is, are we still going to go through this motion today to accept for review and comment these documents? And also, at what point will the council be presented with them for approval as plans for the town?
Okay, let me try to address that. Shannon and I have been discussing that. We think that there are several steps that have to be taken before I would recommend we bring this to the council for adoption or approval, however we want to label that. And that includes, first of all, an internal review, the review that we would do.
Right.
I think it would be wise for us, after we've done an internal review, before we formally adopt something, to submit it to the state for their review and comment. Because they may have comments, changes, additions. Once we've got those and we address them if we need to, at that point, I think, and they're satisfied with that, at that point, I think we would adopt it or approve it. Stevens, is that?
Yeah,
Address what you're thinking
and I'm
is,
fine
and
with
that
that.
may be
Sure,
a
you
month
take
away.
the draft, beat it up, change it,
Yeah.
everything, and then come up with a final.
Yeah.
Do we have any kind of anticipated timeline?
I mean, from our standpoint, these are pretty, you'll see them.
I'm
pretty
sure they're comprehensive
voluminous
and
documents,
technical. Yeah.
and so I would say it's going to take you and others that want to review this. It's taken me several weeks to
Understand.
to get a little bit at a time. So I don't think that, what I'd like to think that we could do is we can probably complete our internal review, just guessing, in 30 days. And then we can submit it to the state.
Right.
And I would give them 30 days
Right.
of back and forth. Hopefully they treat our project with high priority, so I'm assuming that they'll get back to us maybe in 30 days, and then we can address comments.
That's
So I would
what I
say
did.
60 days or
Plus,
so.
right.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
maybe
okay.
2 council meetings in the future,
Yeah, okay.
something like that.
And then
If you're
once we
lucky
get
with
them
the
all,
state.
once we get them all finalized, then maybe at least get them to us a month before the council where we would be expected to approve
So
them.
it could be 3
Plenty of time
months,
to
yeah.
review them.
Yeah.
So,
So far, I mean, the state has asked for these things in the last inspection report. And so, as yet, I think, so far, I would say, without having a meeting with them, which we're going to talk about all this.
Right.
I'm assuming they're okay as long as we're working on this thing. And they think that we're going about it with some sense of urgency. They haven't imposed a deadline, per se, on those things, other than the H&H and the...
okay, well, I'll wait on it, and I don't need a copy now. I'd wait until we're ready to give it to us for at least a month in advance of when we're expected to approve it.
Okay.
So,
After it's been through the state?
go through
Okay.
that course of
Okay.
changes and everything.
What I was going to recommend is that if you wanted to, if you could delegate that out to a couple of council members and form almost like an internal review committee, to have folks on the committee do the internal review, then we could package those comments together, and we could actually send it to the state at the same time. You could run that parallel if you wanted to, and that may be able to save some time. We would know what our issues are.
I think Commissioner Cameron has, in the past, in my understanding, has taken a keen interest in the way things go on out there. I would like him, if you're willing to do that, for
More
sure,
than
to
happy.
take a look at that and put your yellow notes
I'll
in.
be glad to work with Steve on it.
Stephen?
Yeah, and I'm fine, yeah, I'm okay with that, and I may not have any comments at all.
Do you
I
guys
know that
want to
shocks
look at the
everybody.
thing? Or?
Yeah, but that, I mean,
That shocks everybody, but
Well, I've got a lot of comments with Bob, I think he'll do it.
He's doing a good job here. Just saying. Yeah.
So right there,
yeah.
too, we could let Commissioner Cameron, Commissioner Weber review
Be
it,
part of the review team.
submit their comments, we'll compile those and have those ready, and then we could simultaneously send it to the state for their review.
yeah.
And then we'll have both comments, and then we can give those back to Dr. Marks for inclusion in the last draft before it comes to you guys
Yeah.
for
Sounds good.
adoption.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so I assume, is there anything else on the status report, Shannon, that I've left out? And if not, I'd like to move along to the consultant selection item here.
I'm good.
Okay, good. Council good with that?
yeah, we need to make a motion on this.
Yeah, and it's not on the agenda there. All right, so somebody want to make the recommended motion here for board?
Why do we even need a motion to accept a draft document?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
that's-
frankly, Shannon, you recommended maybe we should do this as a procedural thing. Is that something?
Well, I think
feels
we have
strong?
I think we have a new agreed upon process. As long as we've got consensus and everyone's wagging their head, I think we
Yeah.
know what we need to do.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
I
I just,
proceed
I saw it
good.
here, I just.
Yeah, there's no, we're not approving anything, so.
Right.
Would it help us with the state if we, we have evidence that we have looked at this and this is where we are, it helps, put a stake in the ground with them?
It never hurts. And the next steps from what I have my notes say, internal review of the next 30 days. Commissioner Weber, Commissioner Cameron will submit to the state for review and their comment, and then we'll compile those two lists of comments, give them to Dr. Marks, have him include that in the final copy, then it comes back to the board for final review and adoption.
Yeah, that was my only comment, is that it may, in someone at the state's eyes, be seen as a bit of a marker that, on this date, they had done this and they,
Accepted the things for review?
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay. Well, do we have a suggested motion here?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'll make it then. Let's see, make a motion, we accept for review and comment by the Utilities Advisory Board, the mayor, and the interim town manager,
And these other.
and,
Internal committee.
yeah, Commissioner Cameron, Commissioner Weber, Dr. Marks' report is prepared and submitted to us, and upon successfully addressing these review comments with Dr. Marks, authorize the release of these documents if as advised to NCDEQ and DSO for their review and comment.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Kilby. Any further discussion on that? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. Good move. All right, so we move on to new business here. And first item of new business is the dam engineering consultant selection. I'll report on that, and then I will introduce a couple of key members of the engineering team that we'll be working with from the firm that we recommend selection. And then we'll kind of go from there. I'll ask them to come up and kind of give us a few remarks, okay? All right, so as you are aware, because we've been kind of rolling along with this selection process, we advertised with a request for qualifications for interested consulting firms that have expertise and experience in the renovation and design of dam structures, concrete dam structures, to submit their statements of qualification. And we received two SOQ, statements of qualification, from what I would characterize as two exceptionally well-qualified specialty firms in this area. Both, I think our selection committee agreed were well-qualified to provide the services that we think we need to go forward with this project. Now, one team was the firm of Friesen Nichols, based in Texas, and they were teamed up with us, and both of the firms had teams, supplemental sub-consultants that come on to fill sort of unique gaps that they need. And the Friesen Nichols team included Dr. Marks, as well as several other sub-consultants. And the other team was Schnabel Engineering, who their team is based out of Greensboro. And we'll talk some more about that in a minute. Anyway, both of them submitted very well done statements of qualifications. I've distributed to all of you in the boxes the Schnabel SOQ, because that's the recommended firm. And so you give you a chance to see who, if we approve this selection, will be on board and what they had to say about their approach to the project and all of that. We formed a 5-person selection committee that I guess we confirmed at the last meeting, that consisted of David Arrowood, our Public Works Director, Shannon Baldwin as the interim town manager, Harlow Brown as an independent member, public member, although he is a wastewater consultant and does work for us. Harlow served as a member of that team. Myself and Wayne Hyatt, who is the chairman of the Utilities Advisory Board, under which the dam and the hydro station, sort of sit for the purposes of advice to us. And so the five of us went off and we applied the selection evaluation criteria in a grading form that had a total potential number of points for each firm's evaluation of 100. And the team members, we met twice. The first time was to just simply go over the process and for me to answer questions about how to go about this selection process. What would constitute a high grade? What might constitute a lower grade? And then some of my thoughts about selecting consultants and what I found over almost 40 years operating in that business would be important. And so the team then went off after the meeting and with the scoring sheets, one for each firm, and went through these SOQs in detail. In several cases, we checked some of the references, and some of the members of the selection committee, including, I know Harlow and Wayne, had relationships with some of their with some of the clients of these two firms have served. So we did have some reference information. We were able to check some of that. Not everyone, but, and so based on all of that, each of us independently graded the two teams, the two firms and their teams. And what I've given you and what's in the packet is a summary of the scoring by each of us on the committee that aggregates all of the various evaluation criteria for each firm. And a couple things I would just point out. The obvious thing is that Schnabel came out ahead by some 40 points, which is about 10% of the total, a little under 10% of total points awarded. There would have been a total of 500 points if you got a perfect score, and Schnabel got 472. The Friesen-Nichols team got 431, and I think that reflects the fact that they were both very qualified. I mean, I think the results indicate how we felt about the two teams. So we sat down and we discussed, is this enough differential for us as a selection committee to recommend one firm or another? I think it was close enough that we would have that discussion. And where I thought we might be heading is to bring the two teams in here and sit them down and make presentations, and that way we would have an additional data point. And ultimately, it's going to be the town council that approves the selection. And the committee sat down and discussed this for a couple of hours and came to the conclusion, no, not just for the scoring, but for other considerations, they felt that Schnabel was a better fit for our project. And that was unanimous. The scoring was unanimous. The conclusion was unanimous. And I think I put in my email to you guys a sort of deciding, I thought, things that were deciding factors. And the two things that stuck out in my mind were, number one, and this is unique, that they would have an office that close to us, and that's 2 hours. That's fairly close on a national basis.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting in that office are 40 staff people who are dedicated entirely to doing work on dams. And
Well, why are they still sitting in those offices and not here fixing this thing?
There wasn't 40 of them in the office when I visited yesterday. I'll report on that. So I assume they were out on dams. But that's remarkable. I mean, I will just tell you that. I mean, I was surprised. I would think even the largest of the large firms in the country in a specialty area like that would have difficulty showing me a similar staffing pattern. That's pretty good for us to have them that close.
Yeah.
So that was key. I mean, everybody kind of glommed onto that and said, wow, that's pretty good, The second thing that really stuck out in the selection committee's mind was we asked both firms to write an approach, how they would approach our project. And what we asked them to not do is regurgitate the recommendations that were in Dr. Marks's report. Don't tell us what we already know.
Right.
You know, so we asked them to be creative and to come up with things, think outside the box, and recommend things that might not be in there, you know, that we would be of value. And both firms did a pretty good job on that. Theirs, they recommended several things that we thought resonated with us, and one of them was a value engineering assessment of the recommended remediation work. The other thing that both firms really pointed out was you really need to take a step back. We didn't prompt that. They said you need to take a step back, not just from a value engineering standpoint, but maybe from the fundamental recommendations that are made here, to take a look at whether the data that's in there, you know, the hand-calculated data, supports that, and whether the data is correct, you know, second set of eyes. And we've all expressed those kinds of concerns, not, you know, that we doubt Dr. Marks, but just simply that he's his own author. And so having a second set of eyes was important, and they appreciated that, and they recommended this step-back approach. So I think the other firm recommended that, but they didn't recommend it in the context I just said. They recommended we take a big step backwards and we engage in a very structured replanning, risk-based analysis program that is typically followed by federally regulated dams, FERC-regulated dams. And I think what they were trying to communicate with us was, if you guys want federal funding, then you're going to have to do this sooner or later, and you might as well just do it now. Well, I didn't feel, and I think our committee didn't feel like the state of North Carolina was going to be real empathetic to a further delay in our project to do something like this. And this takes months, not weeks.
Right.
And it's expensive. And frankly, to my way of thinking, I think Dr. Marks himself looked at the remediation in a risk-based manner. You know, the way he tried to phase it, he explained that. You know, we'll take the worst first and deal with it. So, you know, whether his conclusions were accurate, his approach was risk-based, and I felt we didn't need to redo that again, frankly. Plus, at the end of the day, and we had some advice from a finance expert, the chances of us getting federal funding where we're not a federally regulated dam, we just didn't feel were really attractive. And so to go through this whole planning process and come out the back end and have a federal agency tell us, well, guys, that's all good, but you know what? We kind of give priority to FERC-regulated facilities. I don't know if that's true or not, but we just didn't think the delay made any sense, and so their approach was superior.
Or the feds say, yeah, we'd be glad to give you money. We've got a pile of money for you. All you have to do is come under FERC regulations.
Right.
So the hook, you know, that's conjecture on our part, but it certainly could be there. I think a few other things that came to mind. I don't know how many times, staff, over the years, you've heard us say, you know what, if Meese and Meese were still here, the original designers of the dam, wouldn't it be great if you could talk with those engineers or find the original plans, which we found a lot of as we were going through the process, just to have a conversation with the folks that designed the dam. They could tell us a lot. Point being, having a long-term relationship with an engineering firm in North Carolina, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when this project is over, to be able to pick up the phone and call a firm who we know would have a copy of our plans, who we know would have engineers maybe still on staff that help with this project, I think brings real value as we move into the future. And this one, clearly, Schnabel stood out over Freese & Nichols. And that firm seemed to be assembling folks from around the country to come in and do this project. And we felt like that having all of them here in North Carolina, that years from now we can pick up the phone and know that in their archives they have our plans, and they still may have engineers after we're gone that could possibly advise us on some things about the dam adds value, just because of the immensity of the project and the importance of it to the town. So I think that was one other. The other was a network of contractors. They've done a ton of work in North Carolina, and having contractors that they know, they've worked with, could help us expedite that process. Certainly would ensure that we have folks come to the table and participate in the bidding process. And we certainly have a track record of their performance through Schnabel and their in their work. I think one other thing was that Denny Martin, I've worked with Denny before in other towns. Denny Martin is basically now has a new firm, and they work closely with Schnabel. And he has secured a lot of money for a lot of folks in Western North Carolina, and certainly was able to come and talk to us a little bit about USD loan, that process. They're adept at that process and can move us through that process quickly. If we can't get financing to do this project's not going to get done. So right there it was another plus from our perspective. It's not just the engineers, but who they have and can work with about securing the funding for this project. Those were the highlights from my perspective, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. Steve, you have a...
Yes, sir. I have no questions or concerns with regarding the process that was undertaken to end up with Schnabel as the selected corporation to represent us and to help us out. I think that was a great job. What I'm looking at is, and looking towards the future, and regarding the FERC requirements, and looking at the proposed repairs from Dr. Mark's reports, this is supposed to give us another 50 years of life to the dam. And looking 50 years down the road, are we then going to need the FERC assistance? And what could we do now during this process that would make that work to FERC standards? Could we do the work now without the FERC funding to FERC standards, so later we could ask for the FERC support and meet the requirements after this work is done? Is that something that could be entertained in the process?
I think it's a good question
So-
for these two gentlemen sitting here, and when they come up, let's ask them. I don't know the answer
And
to that.
the other thing is in Dr. Mark's report, of course, he did address the penstock and
He
the
did.
status a bit, and the hoist for the head gate. And I don't know where in the timeline, I don't recall where in the timeline that was being addressed as for repair, but I believe we certainly need to move that towards the forefront of repairs, because without that hoist and without that penstock, we don't generate electricity.
No.
So,
I think those are two good points. I think as we transition to our new
Yeah.
engineers and we start to tee up their task orders for their support that we might need for these two things.
Right.
There's a couple of other issues that we can bring up that have come to light that are
Right.
not really in Dr. Marks's renovation report, but they're important issues to the dam and how much electric it generates. And
Right.
things we need to address while this is going on. I don't think we should wait on some of these.
and I assume that once we go through the motion of selecting Schnabel, which I hope we do,
We're about
that during the proposed professional services agreement is where there would be a timeline developed for the work. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'll speak to that. When we
Right,
select
okay.
them, I'll move to the next, immediately move
Okay.
to the
Well,
next
that's-
phase of
that's
our
all the
relationship.
questions and concerns I have.
And those are all good, and we'll address those. Anything else on this? So would someone like to make a motion? There's one in the packet.
It's not completed, though.
It's not completed. Yeah, I see
It
that.
looked like it dropped off at near the end of the sentence.
Yeah. I have,
Oh, wait. Okay, here it is.
okay.
I'll go ahead and make that motion.
Okay.
I move to select Schnabel Engineering to perform engineering and other professional services related to the repair and renovation of the Lake Lure Dam, appurtenances, and powerhouse, and to authorize the mayor and interim town manager to engage Schnabel Engineering to perform these services under a professional services agreement that authorizes services to be provided in accordance with task order addendums that define specific scopes of service and commensurate compensation and fee limits.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Cameron. Are there any other comments or suggestions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, well, congratulations, gentlemen. You are new consultants. And so now, let's move into the next phase of our engineering work. And I would like to go ahead and introduce two gentlemen that are here. In the one case, I know Jonathan's been here before, but I'll introduce him as our project manager, Jonathan Pittman, and along with him is our lead engineer, Mark Landis. These two gentlemen we're gonna, I expect, see a lot of and hear a lot from. They're the two, on a project team like that, these are the two people that will control what happens engineering-wise going forward on our dam. And both of them, I've had a chance to spend some time with them. I went to Greensboro yesterday, drove down there out of curiosity, and I enjoy visiting engineering offices. I feel at home there. And so I went down there just to make sure that there actually are at least 40 desks, and there probably were about 30 warm bodies there, so I didn't count them, but I did see them, so they're there. They are in the process of playing musical chairs. They, like us, are in the renovation stage right now. They're renovating their offices, and so they're in a bit of a temporary configuration, but they're all working. I saw them working, and their computers were on, and there seemed to be a buzz in the office that indicate to me that they're a hard-working group. And I got to meet them personally, and I would just say in front of them, I was very impressed. It looks like what I'm used to seeing, a hard-working group, and we look forward to working with them. So, gentlemen, if you would like to come up with one or both or whatever, and kind of introduce yourselves to our council. I know you met them before the meeting, but I kind of told you yesterday. You asked me what do you want me to present, and I said no slides, no PowerPoints, no. We've already done that. Just tell us a little bit about yourselves and Schnabel, and how you see working with the town of Lake Lure. That would be great.
Yeah. First of all, we really appreciate this opportunity. This is a project that we've been tracking to some degree for quite some time, and we're really excited to support you all on it and be your long-term partner for this project. So I'm Jonathan Pittman. I'm, like Mayor Cooley said, I'll be the project manager. I've been with Schnabel for about 18 years now, ever since I got out of school. So it's a fantastic place to be, fantastic group to be with. And this is Mark Landis. He'll be the lead engineer. And Mark and I, all the folks in our office in Greensboro, work closely together. Mark and I have worked on numerous projects together over the last 10 years or so.
Excuse me, could you move a little closer to the
Sure.
microphone or move it closer to you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Didn't want to make it squeal.
Thank you.
That's better. So in terms of Schnabel, Mayor told you a little bit about it, but we have, in Greensboro, we have, depending on how you count it, 5 to 6 offices dedicated to dams, which includes about over 100 professionals. That's all we do day in and day out. And in Greensboro, about 40 of those folks. And we've worked on over 200 dams in North Carolina, well over 1,000 nationwide. We do work primarily, most of our work's the East Coast. We recently opened an office in Seattle, Washington, dedicated to dams. Some of our folks from Greensboro actually went out there to open that office. So we are expanding geographically some there. But that's what we do day in and day out, and kind of soup to nuts in terms of dams we have and supported in Greensboro. And we have all the disciplines represented You know, you can walk down the hall and ask the structural engineer or the gate specialist or, you know, the hydrologist. Whatever you might need is there and represented, and that's fantastic for us. It's a great group of folks who has a lot of experience working together on a large number of projects. So, you know, Mark's right now working up on the town of city of Asheville, the main water supply reservoir, doing a pretty large rehabilitation of that project. Mark's the project manager and lead engineer for that, so just right up the road there. But like I said, again, we're really excited to be here. Feel like we're a great fit. What we look for, it's important for us. We don't pursue projects or clients lightly. When we pursue a project or a client, we're committed to that project. Relationships to us are critical to that, kind of trust throughout that and building those things. And so really an open communication, working together to come up with the best solution that meets your needs, that's, you know, cost effective, that's technically sound, all those things can, you know, that go into consideration for what's the right solution for your project. So.
Good. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We really look forward to working with you guys. We really need your support, as you well know. And we're ready to move along. We're in the action mode here, moving forward. So I think you'll find, you know, we're a responsive client.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to add a couple of things.
Yeah.
Good job describing that. We are currently also working for FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, for hydroelectric plants all over the country. Bureau of Reclamation, Army Corps of Engineers, we are in a review capacity. They do their own designs. We come in and do independent review of their design and oversee construction that we've been involved in our office as well. So even though we're working on dams in North Carolina and for private entities, we're also working for a lot of government agencies. And we're very up to speed on all the requirements for even risk-based requirements associated with FERC, and the Corps does the same thing. They have a risk management center in Denver, and we work closely with those guys too on assessments. I believe Mr. Weber asked some questions about, you know, where do we want to be 50 years from now, and basically that boils down to the cost, because if you invest moving forward to create something that's going to last 100 years. So most dams that we do now, they used to have a 30 to 50 year life expectancy. Now the expectation is 100 years. So when you come into a dam that's already 100 years old, concrete does deteriorate. Right. The steel in the concrete, upon cracking, also deteriorates. So there's some inherent, you know, deterioration that we cannot control. Now, how we evaluate it and how we can retrofit something to make it last longer is also a function of cost. And I'll give you two examples. The city of Burlington, we had two dams that one of them from its concrete dam stability perspective, it did not meet the criteria, and there are actually pieces of the dam during this probable maximum flood that Ms. Cooley was talking about would actually break off and breach the dam. The sister dam to that was probably close to 100 years old also. We evaluated, do we replace the dam or do we retrofit the dam to continue its lifespan? So we did an evaluation for both of them, and we ended up anchoring both dams. So instead of going through the cost of a complete removal and replacement, in that case we were able to retrofit it, and we're able to get probably 50 years of life extension out of it. Now, on another dam, like the Linville Land Harbor Dam right up the road in Linville, the 5 Tainer gates similar size as yours, but the concrete had ASR, so that's alkali silica reaction, and the concrete was broken up, and where your Tainer gates come in, there are trunnion pins there. The trunnion pins were cracked through the concrete, and basically, during a big storm, probably those gates would have failed. Well, they wanted to keep the gates, and we said, well, you cannot keep the gates. You couldn't retrofit it. We said we really need to take it out, so we basically took the entire concrete structure out and put a labyrinth weir in, which is a passive system, so you're not operating any gates. And that was the correct solution for that situation. So until we really, dive into this, get feet on the ground, look at the situation, get our structural engineers involved, geologists to evaluate foundation conditions, and then Jonathan and the rest of us are going to be working up a plan to provide you what is the most cost-effective approach. And, there could be multiple options, and it's all going to get back to how much you want to spend for what duration. So,
And it may not be worthwhile to make the work you do to meet FERC standards now, because 50 years from now, we'll probably have to replace it anyway.
right.
I mean,
It could be.
I have one question about that. We say the repairs we're doing now are supposed to get another 50 years out of the dam. All right, at that point, is it almost a foregone conclusion that it would have to be replaced, or are there additional things that could be done down the road that would extend its life beyond 50 years from today?
So, that's a good question. Like for North Fork Dam, when the dam was designed, it was designed for the storm of record. Now we're putting in a new spillway because that storm of record is invalid anymore. So part of it's going to be seismic, because even though we're not in a really high seismic zone, your structure is still affected by seismic loading. That criteria may change, and also the hydrology may change with climate change. So it's hard to predict what 50 years from now, if the loading conditions change, then you may have to change the dam. We couldn't, I don't know that we can predict out 50 years from.
Right, that's something we don't know. If we assume things are as they are today,
Right.
would the option exist to do additional things to the dam as we go down this 50-year road that would that would preserve it, that it would last beyond 50 years?
And I wish we could answer that question, but until we get into it,
But that's something that you'll probably know is, that will become more evident as you move through the process.
Yes.
Okay. That, for planning purposes, that's something that's pretty essential for us to know.
Right.
I would assume that Dr. Marks has done his studies and everything, but I would assume you will have your own study and analysis of where we're at.
Yes.
And so your work you will be doing will be, if they match, they match. If you'll be doing your work based on what your analysis and what you determine.
Right, yeah, that's great. I mean, one of the first things, kind of initial tasks for us, well, I think two things. One is we feel like it's important to meet with North Carolina Dam Safety early in this process and talk through kind of project approach and what their expectations are. There's some things in the letter from them that are maybe a little unclear as to what they're asking for. So we think that's important. We have an excellent relationship with those folks. So meeting up front with them is important. And secondly, is reviewing all the available information, which includes Dr. Mark's work. If we agree with it, certainly we can incorporate that into our work. If there's something that needs to be adjusted there, then we would do that, update that work, and incorporate that accordingly. And then that also includes review of some of these construction photographs that are in here are invaluable and very helpful for us. So it would include that, a review of available information, which a lot has been researched already, and by Dr. Marks and incorporated in his work. So.
One of the things that the state has called for are the two things that will be in their initial task order. One of them is a underwater examination of the front face of the dam, which has not been done. It's never, I mean, my knowledge, it may have been done 50 years ago, but it hasn't been done recently. And but the second thing I think is really significant. It's an actual computer modeling analysis of the dam structurally. It's called a finite element analysis, and it looks at the various forces acting on a dam under the maximum flow condition. And our dam, being the design it is, this inclined arch buttress dam, it's very complicated analysis, and we kind of got into it yesterday. They brought in their head finite analysis modeler that I appreciated, because I could actually understand what he was saying. I mean, he was explaining it in terms I could even understand. But their approach, which I really liked, we have a 400-foot long dam, and to subject the entire structure to a finite element analysis is an enormous undertaking. He estimated it could be in excess of 1,000 man-hours to model that thing, because it's large, it's redundant, it's duplicate. And his approach is from our standpoint, you may not need to do that. If you just take a section of the dam, a buttress and half of the two adjoining arches, maybe we can learn from that what we need to know in order to draw conclusions about sufficiently about the structural integrity of the dam that we don't need to model. And I like that about that, but that's something that's not been done. And Dr. Marks's calculations are, I would say, very fundamental in terms of his various modes of failure, for shifting. And this will tell us, I think, a lot more, won't it?
Yeah, it certainly will. It's very difficult to analyze the stability of these structures in 2 dimensions with hand calculations. And so this finite element modeling, which is done in 3D, will more accurately represent that. And we will do some hand calculations and such to confirm reasonableness of the results and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think one of our general approaches here in terms of the finite element modeling and some other things is let's do enough to be able to find out if something's an issue or not. But we know you have limited resources, and so we don't need to spend 1,000 hours or whatever it might be up front doing this whole model. If we can come to a similar conclusion with 10-20% of that effort, and then if we need to take the next step based on the initial results, then we'll approach you with that. But
and that's what we appreciate there, because that's part of my notes is we are a small community. $5 million can be spent real quick if we continue on with 1,000 hours on engineering. But the state doesn't care about money. They never have, but we have to. We've got a responsibility here, and all this $5 million's borrowed. This community has to pay this back. So same way my background's construction. Having been in there, you can project manage a lax way of which money flies through the window, or you can do exactly what you're talking about. And I just ask that we're trusting you to spend our money wisely, because like I said, when you start bringing in all these engineers, and I know engineering costs, in a matter of a month, we could spend $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, and maybe $10,000 of that wasn't necessary. So I just ask you to consider it your own home, that $5 million is a lot of money to this community. If we can get it done for $3 million, it'd be great. So we're just asking, we're trusting you to look out for our community and our money.
And as we get into this and understand the dam better, then that partnership that Jonathan was talking about, what do we tackle first? What's the most critical part to keep the dam safe?
Right.
And
That's what the state's going to want to hear, without question.
And here again, we've proven it's safe right now. What we want to do is make it safe for 50 more years, or 100 if we can. But I think this storm gave some very great information for starting the engineering anyway.
I think one of the, excuse me,
Thank you.
working on the dam and just thinking about keeping the dam renovation in a silo and not considering the other pieces that are part of this. My hope is that we'll do that. When you think about the dam, right now we have 3 gates, 3 Tainer gates, and they have to be raised and lowered based on the storms. As we move forward, if there's something that could be designed that would take some of the extra work out of that process, when you think about operations, when you think about trying to absorb or get ready for a storm that comes, automation, you may have something as you go through this thing that says, hey, this is a piece that ought to be automated, or maybe this can be removed, similar to what you did at Land Harbor, and we could put something permanent in here that would serve as a safeguard. If basically we had a large flood. We got the hydroelectric component of this dam, which adds a level of complexity. We have to be able to operate it in such a way, as someone said, to maximize power generation, and that probably over the next 50 years, we probably need to set up a fund so that we think about this thing has to be replaced after 50 years. Why aren't we setting aside money like we should have been doing for the last 90 or 100? That's probably part of this. When you think about sewer's integrated in with this dam. But we've got a treatment plant. Right now, we're in a process where we're looking at low-pressure sewer. That could be the place where it serves as final treatment. It could be another site, but that has to be taken into consideration as we work on this dam. And then the last piece is something that DOT has been crawling all over that site. They're wanting to basically take cars off that dam and run them over a new bridge. And they've looked below, they've looked above, they've looked at different angles, they've surveyed. There may be some of that data available that you want to review. But on the front side of the dam is where they seemingly were wanting to run a brand new bridge on the front side over the water. I think that's changed now. So all those things seemingly are tied together, and we need to just be cognizant of those things as you move forward, rather than just silo the review and analysis. There's lots of things we need to keep in mind as we move forward.
If I might add to one of the points he made, and the DOT did extensive surveying on this side of the dam, looking to build that bridge on this side of it, and I'm sure that those survey results might be available, which could help as to what's here. And Dean Gibbons, our lake operations guy, may have a contact, or may even have copies of it.
He's got a contact for sure. So bathymetric, I'm sure they've done some.
Yeah, they did extensive surveying on this side of the dam. So
Okay. Yeah, we were talking about that yesterday.
Yesterday, the bathymetric, yeah, and I think that's where we're going to get it, yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's,
based on everything, how far out from today and between you, Mr. Mayor, and Shannon, do you envision having the PSA done, completed? That would have the timeline for work and all that kind of stuff?
Well, it's a good segue into where I was going here.
Oh, okay.
I had asked Jonathan a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, anticipating, that they'd be hired. I said, why don't you send us a copy of a task ordering PSA contract?
Right.
And,
Got it.
that has a boilerplate. It's just a boilerplate. And then it sets up then the additional addenda that go with it for each of the task orders that would include the scope and the compensation fee provision and schedule. And so he did that. And so I've had this now since, about a week, and I've gone through it and I've made some comments to it. I think it's well done. I liked it. But it still hasn't gone to our attorney where it needs to go. And anyone else that wants to see it. And then they sent me sort of a mock-up of the first task order based on the understanding they had about doing the 2 items in the state's letter. And we talked yesterday about adding the meeting with the state in here. And there may be a couple of other things that we want to talk about. The, tailwater issue.
Right.
And some other things we might want them to look at. So that's where we are, and I would say we're within a couple of weeks, maybe, you'd think? We could move pretty fast on this.
Certainly, I think we can, what we can do is take that kind of template task order and start putting some more details to that as you're reviewing the professional services agreement, so that there's not a
So hopefully by the 14th, I was thinking about that. I don't know how far in advance, though, we could get it done.
Yeah.
And I hate to, just drop that on us at the
Well,
11th hour.
And I assume, like I'm asking before about the timeline,
Yeah.
I assume we're not going to be following Dr. Mark's timeline that he provided in the reports, as detailed as what he had, that you'll be developing your own timeline based on capabilities and what you find, and I understand that. Obviously, I'm anxious to see us get started on some actual work going on, and some of these problems actually being fixed and worked on. But I understand we got to go through all this first, so.
I wanted to point out too, Sam's here, finance director, and so Sam has worked with Denny Martin before in the past quite a bit too. And one of the things that Denny pointed out to us when we had lunch with Denny was that the PER that was created by Dr. Marks may not work for a USDA loan. So it sounded like to me that was something that would need to be done up front to set the stage for a submittal to USDA if that becomes our primary source of revenue for this renovation. So that, I'm segueing off what Commissioner Weber just stated, that's something that we may need to get a second review on to ensure that we can hit some of the deadlines that USDA, has in front of us. And it sounds like to me there's a lot of money there. There's a budget change. I think the president took the money out, and then Congress put it back in and really loaded it up. And so right now there's a lot of money available. And the fear is if it's not used, the next cycle, which the money may not be there, and that would be the one that if we wait, we would then be a part of. But if we can hit it now, we may be able to get some of the money that we know is available. So that's my understanding as to where things are. So just ask that we take that into consideration.
Yeah, we're going to jump on Denny as soon as he gets back. He's out of the country, and he'd be here today otherwise. But
We have this proposal.
absolutely.
Yeah. And so we asked him to send us a PSA as well. So
We have that. He was a member of your team, but in the because of the urgency of this, we thought we run on a parallel path for a while, get him going while you're going, that we can, we can get to where we need to be faster.
Right.
Let's say that.
I think certainly that makes sense, and, we can provide whatever support Denny needs for the funding effort and work together that, because you're right, ultimately, you can't do anything without
the money.
with the money.
We got to have the money.
So the next step is, I've made some comments in your boilerplate. You'll see them. I don't like the word indemnification ever. Just tell you that. You have the typical provisions that come right out of NCWS, contracts for ownership of documents, and I understand the purpose of that, and I understand why that's worded like that, but we need to have sort of a clear understanding that there are deliverables here, and those documents are documents that that you may own, but we paid for.
Absolutely.
So we need unfettered access to those documents and the use of them downstream for construction that you will be involved in. So I want this agreement to be clear in that sense, not that you own that intellectual rights to those documents, that we have rights to them. And I'm not sure that's clear in here. And then this is referencing the Commonwealth of Virginia. Now, I know this was a sample you gave us, so we need to make sure this is North Carolina-centric in terms of the governing laws and dispute resolution and all that. But aside from that, and I think those things are easily, I'm pretty sure you've been down that road before with these
Right.
agreements. Those are easily handled, and other than that, I think we'd be, I'll show this to our attorney, he may have some more comments, but I think we'd be ready to roll, and then we can go, we don't need to wait, we can go right into the scoping side of the first task order based on, we can get the H&H, or the finite element analysis scoped, we can get the underwater, and I know we need to have the bathymetric information. You told me yesterday about the cost of doing underwater investigation below a certain depth. It really affects the price, right? So we'll need to know that, I assume, before we set a fee level. And then we know we're going to have the meeting with the state. It should go pretty well budget what we need to do to prepare for that and do that. And then what else did we talk about this morning? This engineering report, maybe? We need to talk about that some more for USDA when Denny gets back, hopefully soon.
Yeah. So the two things we have set right now in motion is we do have a PSA from Denny, and then also we have a resolution, which is the last thing on this
We're
agenda.
about to get to, yeah.
That we're about to get to, that if we pass, then whatever money we spend, we can reimburse ourselves out of a loan. If we spend the money now, pass resolution, if we spend the money now, we can pay ourselves back out of the loan so that we don't have to, Sam has set the stage for that, so.
And nothing derogatory against our attorney, but would his level of expertise in contracts be sufficient to give us what we need here, or do we want to seek a different review and opinion? And again, nothing against him. I know lawyers all have specialties and so on, so.
Well, this is something you guys that have been on the council for a while can help me with, because I don't know what we've done before. I mean, this is not the first contract that I'm sure has come before the town council, and I don't know who else we may have used, or if the advice we got from William we were not satisfied with, or I don't know. So I yield to you guys.
Maybe then, yes, we send it to William and ask him directly. Does he feel confident enough in providing a sufficient legal opinion and review on it? Or does he feel he has those capabilities?
Yeah, that's a good approach. Our contracts have always just been reviewed by our town attorney.
Yeah.
And I think where we've gotten in trouble before might have been when we were into things more complicated than that, and we didn't step up a level. But I feel confident that William would tell us if he thought we needed assistance.
Outside counsel.
over his head, yeah.
Okay, I'll do that today. I'll send this to him, and we'll get his comments back, or whoever comments back promptly, and I'd say within a week I'll ask for them, no longer than that. And then we can get back together and work out the task order side and whatever changes. That okay for you guys?
Sounds great.
All right.
Expedite.
Moving forward, push the ball downfield. Well, thanks a lot for coming this
thank
morning.
you.
And again, we really look forward to working with you guys. We're excited about it and proud to have you as our consultants.
Great. Thanks
Thank you
again.
very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so moving on in our agenda, we have one last item of new business, and this is this resolution that Shannon was just referring to that talks about reimbursement. I see Sam's name is on the request for board action. Sam, you just want to say a couple words as to, beyond what Shannon just said, is why we need to do this?
Come on, Sam, let us, give us the what.
We don't want to...
Shannon was right.
He was right,
He was
okay.
right.
Well, that's one in a row then.
Yeah, and we've done these reimbursements for other loans in a smaller scale, like vehicles. And that's just, there's expenses there's expenses that incur before the actual loan is approved. And we're just asking for it's like a formality that we're asking for reimbursements from the loan.
This says our currently, the actual resolution says the currently expected maximum amount would be 5 million. We approve this resolution, what happens, we go beyond that? Do we just do another one, or do we do a budget amendment?
Well, hopefully, we'll have a loan before we spend out $5 million, so.
This is just to take care of incidental expenses. that
Right.
Come up until we get the loan.
Right, exactly, right.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with it.
And if we spend more than 5 million before we get the loan, we'll do another one.
So Shannon,
And we'll do a lot of stuff.
do we need to read the resolution into the record, or the document, it stands on its own?
It can stand on its
Make a
own.
motion to accept the resolution
Right,
180801?
yeah.
Hey, someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion to adopt resolution number 18-08-01 to authorize reimbursement of funds that may be advanced or may be advanced from the general fund for project costs intended to be reimbursed from the financing proceeds related to the repair and renovation of Lake Lure Dam, appurtenances, and powerhouse.
All right, we have a motion, is there a second?
Second to.
Second by Commissioner Kilby, any other discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Same.
Thank you.
I make a motion with June.
I was gonna ask Sam a
That's your
question.
motion.
Go ahead, I've got a question.
He's got a question that doesn't count.
If I may, Sam, if, now that we've mentioned Denny Martin and his work, could you tell us just a little bit about your work with Denny and your comfort level?
Yeah, Denny is basically the to-go guy. I first experienced Denny in a working relationship when we did this building, actually. So this was back in '92. So I remember going to Raleigh to the LGC meeting with Denny, just real green about the process, but and he's helped us with the fire station improvements. He's done some water and sewer rate studies back in the day for us. So I think Denny is the great, we're lucky to have him, actually. I think he's-
Sam, are you comfortable with the PSA he sent to us?
Yeah.
All right, so we have a motion to adjourn, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, the second by Commissioner Cameron. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Stowe.